The fire that wasn't an accident. It was just after midnight on December 27th, 2006. A quiet night in Briceville, Florida, the kind of small rural community where everyone knows everyone else. Inside a small trailer home on the Ratley family's property, a young couple slept soundly. 23-year-old Michael Ratley and his wife, 27-year-old Effie, had recently welcomed their first child, a baby boy named Aiden. The future, for once, seemed hopeful. But within minutes, everything they owned would be consumed by fire. Michael later told investigators that he woke up to a strange smell, something burning. When he opened his eyes, he saw the living room curtains glowing orange. Flames were crawling up the wall. He shouted Effie's name and ran straight for the crib. Baby Aiden was still asleep. Michael grabbed him, ran outside, and then realized Effie was still inside. He claimed the fire had already spread too fast for him to reach her through the hallway, so he ran to the window of their bedroom, ripped a metal satellite dish off its mount, and smashed the glass. Through thick black smoke, he shouted her name. Moments later, Effie stumbled toward the window. Michael pulled her through, just before the roof collapsed behind her. By the time firefighters arrived, the home was gone. The family had lost everything: clothes, baby items, photographs, even their wedding rings. But they had survived. A community's miracle. The next day, the story spread quickly. A young father saves his wife and newborn from a midnight blaze. A Christmas miracle in small-town Florida. Local news crews filmed the couple standing together beside the charred remains of their trailer. Effie held her baby close. Michael had his arm around her shoulders, ash still smudged on his face. Reporters asked how he had managed to wake up in time. Michael said quietly, "I don't. But no, I just did." Effie, visibly shaken but grateful, told them, "It's good to see him and know that he's okay. We're lucky to be alive." The story ran on the evening news that same day. Viewers across Florida saw the footage. Two people who had lost everything, but still had each other. Michael told one reporter, "I might have lost everything physical, but I've still got my two most precious things." Neighbors called him a hero. Even the fire department praised his quick thinking. But as the ashes cooled, something about the scene didn't sit right with investigators. The first suspicion: fire marshals noted that the blaze had burned unusually fast for an electrical fire. They attributed it to faulty wiring, perhaps from a plug-in baby wipe warmer. But privately, one investigator made a note in his report: "Fire pattern inconsistent with electrical origin. Recommend further review." Still, there was no reason to doubt the young couple's story. They were victims, traumatized, exhausted, and lucky to be alive. Within days, donations poured in. Family members helped them move into a small storage buildings on the same property while they figured out their next steps. Michael told friends he planned to rebuild. He thanked everyone for their kindness, promising that things would get better. And for a while, it seemed they did. The couple began putting their lives back together. Michael helped his father around the yard, and Effie focused on caring for baby Aiden. But behind closed doors, cracks were forming, emotional ones. Effie's friends would later say that something about Michael's behavior had changed. He was restless, distant, and moody. He had disappeared for hours, then come home late at night without explanation. When Effie asked where he'd been, he'd tell her to stop nagging. One friend recalled her saying quietly, "I think something's wrong with him. He's not the same, a fire without closure." A month passed, and the community began to move on. The tragedy of the Ratleys' house fire faded from memory, replaced by new stories and new headline. But for investigators, that single line in the report, "fire pattern inconsistent," still stood out. They didn't know it yet, but that small note would later become a key piece in one of Florida's most disturbing domestic crime cases. Because in just a few short weeks, there would be another emergency call from that same property. And this time, no one would mistake it for an accident. The call that changed everything. 111, "What's your emergency?" Male voice, panicked, "Please help me. My wife's hurt. She's bleeding. I don't know what happened." February 4th, 2007, just 5 weeks after the fire that destroyed the Ratleys' home. Police and paramedics rushed once again to the Ratley family property in Briceville, Florida. But this time, there was no fire. What they found inside the small shed where the couple had been staying would change everything they thought they knew about that heroic night. Scene of the second emergency. Deputies arrived within minutes. They entered through an unlocked door. No signs of forced entry, no broken windows, nothing stolen. On the floor, they found 27-year-old Effie Ratley lying unconscious, surrounded by blood. She had severe head trauma and deep bruising around her neck. Her baby boy, Aiden, was in a bassinet nearby, crying but unharmed. Standing a few feet away was Michael Ratley, his shirt streaked with blood, his hands trembling. He told deputies that he had just stepped outside to warm up his car for work. When he came back in, he said, Effie was on the ground. Someone must have broken in, he insisted. She was fine when I left. But investigators quickly noticed something odd. The door frames were intact, the locks unbroken, and there were no footprints outside besides Michael's. Then they saw it, a heavy metal wrench lying near Effie's body. It was spattered with blood. When detectives examined it closely, they realized it wasn't just any wrench. It matched the set Michael kept in his toolbox, the same set his father said he had been using the day before. The investigation deepens. Effie was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Doctors determined she had been struck repeatedly in the head and strangled. They placed her in a medically induced coma, uncertain if she'd survive the night. Back at the scene, detectives began treating the shed not as a burglary, but as a crime scene. They photographed blood spatter, collected fingerprints, and searched for any sign of an intruder. There wasn't one. When Michael was brought in for questioning, his story began to shift. At first, he said he had been outside for 5 minutes. Later, it became 10, then 15. Finally, he said he might have blacked out and didn't remember. Detectives noted how calm he was. His voice never rose, his eyes never welled up. One officer later said, he looked more confused about being caught than about his wife being attacked. The break in the case. While Effie fought for her life, investigators searched the property again, this time more thoroughly. Inside a small drawer in Michael's nightstand, they found burned notebook pages, still faintly legible. Written in Michael's handwriting were fragments of sentences that made detectives' blood run cold. Make it look like robbery. She can't live. Insurance covers it. And hidden under a mattress, a printed email exchange between Michael and an insurance company. The date was December 18, 2006, just 9 days before the fire. The email confirmed a $1 million life insurance policy application in Effie's name. Michael was listed as the sole beneficiary. Investigators realized that the so-called heroic fire might not have been an accident at all. It may have been Michael's first failed attempt. Revising the fire investigators were contacted to re-examine the debris from the December blaze. This time, they approached it as a potential crime scene. They found chemical residue consistent with gasoline or another accelerant, something deliberately used to start or intensify a fire. The original theory of a faulty outlet no longer fit the evidence. The conclusion was shocking, but unavoidable. The fire had been intentionally set. Michael's miracle rescue had been a staged event, a failed murder attempt disguised as tragedy. It now appeared that Michael Ratley had planned to kill his wife, collect the insurance money, and rebuild his life without her. But when the fire failed, he tried again. The arrest. With evidence mounting, the notes, the wrench, the insurance documents, and the inconsistencies in his story, detectives arrested Michael Ratley for attempted first-degree murder and arson. When questioned again, Michael didn't confess. Instead, he told investigators, "You don't understand. She made me do it." He blamed stress, financial pressure, and marital tension. But the evidence painted a different picture, a calculated, premeditated plan to end his wife's life. Meanwhile, Effie remained in a coma for weeks. Doctors weren't sure she'd ever wake up, but she did. And when she did, she remembered everything. The woman who survived. Twice, Effie told detectives that she had woken up that morning to Michael standing over her. He said nothing. He just kept hitting her. She tried to scream, but he strangled her until everything went dark. Her testimony confirmed what investigators already suspected. Michael Ratley wasn't a grieving husband or a hero. He was a man who had tried and failed to kill his wife twice. The woman who lived twice. For 31 days, Effie Ratley lay in a medically induced coma. Her skull had been fractured, her throat bruised from strangulation. Doctors weren't sure she'd ever open her eyes again. Outside her hospital room, detectives waited, because if she woke up, her story could make or break their case. And then, on the morning of March 6th, 2007, she did. The first words. When Effie's eyes opened, her sister was by her side. The first thing Effie whispered wasn't a question, it was a statement. "He tried to kill me." Detectives entered quietly. She was weak, but her memory was sharp. She told them that morning was like any other. Michael getting ready for work, their baby asleep. Then suddenly, she felt a blow to her head. "I thought something fell," she said. "But then I saw his face. He was just watching me." She tried to scream, but he hit her again. Then his hands went around her neck. Her vision blurred. Everything faded to black. She remembered one last thought before losing consciousness. He's finishing what he started. The pattern of a predator. Detectives knew what she meant. When the house fire happened, Michael had told everyone he'd saved her. Now her words suggested the opposite, that the fire might have been his first attempt. They laid out the evidence before her, the insurance policy, the notes, the wrench. Effie nodded. She wasn't surprised. She told them Michael had been acting strange ever since she discovered he'd been having an affair. He was distant, angry, and obsessed with money. She remembered him saying once, half-jokingly, "If something ever happens to you, at least the baby and I will be set." At the time, she thought it was just a dark joke. Now, it chilled her to the bone. Building the case, with Effie's testimony, prosecutors had what they needed to move forward. Michael Ratley was charged with attempted first-degree murder, arson, and insurance fraud. Detectives began piecing together the full timeline, and it was more disturbing than anyone had imagined. In early December 2006, weeks before the fire, Michael had started asking coworkers odd questions. "How much life insurance can you get if your wife dies in an accident? What if the house burns down? Is that covered?" They laughed it off. Now those words became evidence. The trial in 2009, nearly 3 years after the fire, Michael Ratley went on trial in Nassau County, Florida. Effie took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she described the moment she woke to her husband's attack. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away from him once. "I trusted him," she said. "He was supposed to protect me, but the man I married tried to kill me twice." The defense tried to claim Michael suffered a mental breakdown. They said financial stress and temporary insanity drove him to violence. But prosecutors painted a clearer picture, not of a man who snapped, but of one who planned, waited, and acted deliberately. They showed jurors the burned notebook, the insurance application, and photographs of the crime scenes. Then came the kicker, testimony from Michael's own father. He told the jury that his son had once said, "It'd be easier if she were gone." That statement hit like a hammer. Verdict and sentence. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Michael Ratley was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He showed no visible reaction as the judge read the sentence. Effie sat silently in the courtroom, tears running down her face, not from sadness, but relief. Aftermath. Today, Effie lives a quiet life focused on raising her son, Aiden, the boy she and Michael once dreamed would start a new chapter. She rarely speaks publicly about the case, but when she does, her message is clear. If you feel something's wrong, trust your instincts. Don't wait until it's too late. The fire that once made her husband a local hero turned out to be a symbol of something darker, the facade of a man willing to destroy everything for money and control. Effie survived both his fire and his fury. She rebuilt her life from ashes, and in the process, she exposed a killer hiding in plain sight.